This video was requested by Cash. She wants me to talk about frogs, so let's talk about frogs today. So I love frogs. Very, very good choice. This is actually one I took last year, a picture at my university campus bus stop. Just a little guy, so he's very cute. Here's just some interesting things about frogs. So, frogs, as you know, have a very interesting way of catching their prey, much like chameleons do. They can actually shoot their tongue out in order to snag an insect or small fish or anything, and then very quickly retract it back into their mouth, pulling the insect with them. Now, kind of a relatively recent study that was done showed that they have really weird saliva in order to accomplish this. So the study found that most of the time the saliva in the frog is just very thin and watery, but when it's on the tongue and gets shot out of the frog's mouth and it makes contact with an insect, then it actually not fully solidifies, but it gets more like dense and it grabs onto the insect. So if the saliva gets attached to the insect, it coats it while it's thin and watery, and then it solidifies. So the insect is essentially just stuck to the saliva on the frog's tongue. Then it gets yoinked back into the frog's mouth. But since the frog doesn't really want the insect to be stuck on its tongue while trying to eat it, then the saliva goes back to being thin and watery in order to easily release the insect so it can be swallowed by the frog. This, combined with the frog's tip of the tongue being very, very soft, allows for it to just super easily mold around the insect to get maximum surface area, so to make it way harder for the insect to get away, and way easier for the frog to just pull it back into its mouth. Frogs also have a very neat mode of respiration. So frogs do have lungs. They can breathe like other vertebrates, so reptiles, mammals, snakes, all that. They can breathe and they do have lungs. However, they have a different mechanism of breathing. They don't have ribs or a diaphragm. So in humans and other vertebrates, we have a diaphragm in our chest cavity that pulls down to expand, increasing the space, causing air to rush in. That's how we breathe. But since frogs don't have ribs or a diaphragm, they kind of collapse the bottom of their throat to increase the space and increase the pressure, allowing the air to flow in. Frogs also do cutaneous respiration, which means they breathe through their skin as well. So frogs are amphibians, meaning they live both in and out of the water. So when out of the water, breathing through lungs and the respiratory tract is more efficient because there's less moisture in the air, so the cutaneous respiration doesn't really work as well. But underwater, there's no oxygen to breathe through their lungs, so the cutaneous respiration works very well by absorbing the dissolved oxygen into the capillary beds directly under the skin. So they get very easy direct gas exchange just by absorbing everything through the water. However, this does have some side effects due to the fact that they can absorb other things, so they are rather vulnerable to things like environmental toxins and pesticides and all that. Now, I'm sure most people who are familiar with frogs are familiar with the process of metamorphosis, in which they change from these really cute little tadpoles into the full adult frog. Now, this big change is triggered by a hormone released from the thyroid gland, creatively called thyroid hormones. When this hormone is released, it triggers a cascade of events that essentially results in the tadpole's body going, hey, it seems like it's time to turn into a frog, we should probably do that. However, with an improperly functioning thyroid gland, or a improper hormone cascade or receptors and anything, that doesn't really happen. I previously made a video about juvenile hormone in insects, which essentially does the same function, and if you knock out the things for shutting down juvenile hormone, you can get some really, really big larvae. And guess what? That can happen in frogs too. This was a absolutely bonkers massive tadpole found. It was in a pond in Arizona, and look at the size of this bad boy. So I'm assuming what happens is that this tadpole had a non-functional thyroid and so could not produce the thyroid hormone. So instead of fully doing metamorphosis to get into an adult frog, he just kept growing. And I mean, obviously something was working for him because he got to a massive size. Like, that is one big ass tadpole. Finally, we gotta mention my favorite types of frogs, the poison dart frogs. So these guys don't actually produce the poison on their own. Almost all types of poison dart frogs get their poison through their diets. So these frogs eat insects, and the insects actually don't really produce their own toxin either in some cases. Sometimes they do, but oftentimes they get those from the plants that they eat. So, there's a plant. The plant doesn't want to get eaten, so it produces a toxin that would kill most things that try to eat the plant. Except a bug is like, delicious, and eats the plant, and instead of dying like normal, it intakes the poison and then uses it on its own. Because the bug doesn't want to get eaten. So it's like, oh sweet, I'm toxic now, nothing's gonna eat me. Except the frogs go, delicious. And then they eat the toxic insects that would kill most other things that eat them, and instead of dying like normal, they also just take the poison and secrete it through their skin. And then it does kind of just stop there, because they're poisonous, nothing really eats them because they have this very nice coloring that say, hey, don't eat me, I taste bad and may kill you. But the kind of important thing about poison dart frogs is just touching them will not hurt you. The poison needs to get into your bloodstream, and so in most cases it can't absorb through your skin, so you need to actually ingest the poison. So by, for some reason, licking the frog or touching the frog and then touching your eyes, mouth, nose after touching it without washing your hands, or if you touch the frog and you have an open cut, then you can get poisoned. But if you're just holding it, it's not going to hurt you unless you do something stupid with it. So yeah, I'm a big fan of frogs too, so Cass, hope you like the frog video.